In 1931, Japan invaded Manchuria, a vast and resource-rich region of northeastern China. But within months, the empire established control and setting up a puppet state called Manchukuo. Amidst the chaos of occupation, one man saw an opportunity. Lieutenant General Shiro Ishii, a microbiologist in the Imperial Japanese Army, was a man of genius and ambition. Educated at Kyoto Imperial University, Ishii rose quickly through the ranks, known for his intelligence and arrogance. He believed Japan's future dominance depended on mastering the new frontier of warfare biological weapons. At the time, the Geneva Protocol had outlawed such research, but Ishii argued that germs could achieve what armies could not. A single plague could cripple entire cities, a bacteria could do what bombs never could, kill silently, invisibly, efficiently. And so, Ishii proposed a radical idea, a secret research unit dedicated to weaponizing disease. In 1936, with full approval from the Japanese Military High Command, Ishii established his first experimental base outside Harbin. Its official name was the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department of the Kwantung Army. But within the military, everyone knew the code name, Unit 731. The facility covered more than 6 square kilometers, complete with laboratories, barracks, animal farms, and incinerators. A self-contained city of horror, capable of holding thousands of prisoners. The compound was surrounded by high walls, machine gun towers, and barbed wire. The only way in or out was through guarded gates. Inside, Ishii's vision became reality, a place where every experiment could be performed without consequence. And for that, he needed human subjects. The first victims of Unit 731 came from the surrounding villages. Chinese civilians, accused of being spies or partisans, were arrested and brought to the compound. Soon, Korean resistance fighters, Mongolian peasants, and captured Soviet soldiers followed. Eventually, even Allied prisoners, Americans and British, were sent here after being captured in the Pacific. The scientists of Unit 731 did not call them humans. They were referred to as maruta, the Japanese word for logs, a cruel euphemism chosen to disguise their work even in official documents. Because to Shiro Ishii and his staff, these were not people. They were data points, numbers, and objects for experimentation. Inside the cold concrete laboratories, the true horror began. Prisoners were deliberately infected with plague, anthrax, cholera, typhoid, and syphilis. Each disease was studied meticulously, symptoms recorded, progression observed, death noted. When a victim was near death, they were taken to the dissection room. There, doctors, often former medical students, performed vivisections, that is, surgical dissections on living people without anesthesia. Organs were removed one by one while the heart was still beating. The effects of infection, dehydration, and starvation were recorded in precise detail. Every cut, every scream became a note in a scientific report. To Ishii, these were clinical observations. To the victims, it was pure agony. Winter in Manchuria could reach temperatures below -30 degrees Celsius. Ishii saw this as an opportunity. He ordered his staff to study frostbite. How much cold could the human body endure before tissue died? How could frostbite be treated most effectively on the battlefield? To find out, prisoners were stripped naked and forced outside. Their arms or legs were drenched in water and left exposed to the freezing air. When the flesh turned white and hard, scientists struck the limbs with wooden sticks. If it made a sound like wood, they said, the freezing was complete. Then they thawed the limbs, sometimes with fire, sometimes with boiling water. The results were noted carefully. Most subjects died from shock, infection, or gangrene. Those who survived were dissected for further study. This was science stripped of morality, curiosity without compassion. Unit 731's work wasn't confined to its walls. The scientists wanted to test their biological weapons in the real world. Villages in Manchuria were deliberately infected. Japanese aircraft dropped ceramic bombs filled with plague-infected fleas over Chinese towns. Wells were poisoned with cholera and typhus. Crops were contaminated with anthrax spores. Entire communities died. Men, women, and children. The resulting outbreaks spread uncontrollably. It's estimated that more than 400,000 civilians perished in these biological attacks. But for Ishii and his men, these were field experiments, a chance to test their theories. The human cost was irrelevant. While Unit 731 was the largest and most infamous, it was not alone. Across occupied Asia, similar programs operated under different numbers, Unit 100, Unit 1644, and others. Together, they formed a vast network of biological and chemical warfare research, each specialized in a different area: poisons, anthrax, pathogens, or toxins. Thousands of people were killed in their experiments, and all of it was done in total secrecy. Even within Japan, very few people knew the truth. The scientists and soldiers involved were sworn to silence under penalty of death. By 1945, Japan's empire was collapsing. The Americans had bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The Soviets were advancing through Manchuria. As the Red Army closed in, Ishii gave his final order: destroy everything. Laboratories were blown up, prisoners were executed, records were burned, and all remaining evidence of Unit 731's existence was erased. Before fleeing, Ishii personally ordered the killing of all remaining logs. Hundreds were shot, poisoned, or burned alive to ensure silence. By the time Soviet forces reached Pingfang, they found only ashes and ruins, and a stench that told them everything they needed to know. After Japan's surrender, the Allies launched the Tokyo War Crimes Tribunal to bring war criminals to justice. Generals, politicians, and doctors were tried and executed. But Shiro Ishii was never among them, nor were any of his top scientists, because in the early days of the Cold War, the United States saw an opportunity. The data from Unit 731 on plague, anthrax, frostbite, and human endurance was priceless. The US military quietly offered immunity to Ishii and his colleagues in exchange for their research. The deal was made in secret. The victim's suffering was buried beneath politics and power. Ishii lived out his days in peace, dying of throat cancer in 1959. Many of his staff went on to become professors, doctors, and corporate scientists in post-war Japan. They built new careers on the foundations of human suffering. For decades, Japan denied the existence of Unit 731. The subject was taboo, erased from history textbooks, ignored in classrooms, silenced in the media. But survivors in China remembered. They spoke of black smoke rising from the crematoriums, of relatives who vanished, and of the fear that gripped villages when planes flew overhead. In the 1980s and 1990s, Japanese journalists and historians began to uncover the truth. Former soldiers and scientists, haunted by guilt, came forward with confessions. Their testimonies confirmed everything. Even then, official acknowledgement was slow. It took decades before Japan publicly admitted to its wartime biological experiments. Unlike the Nazi doctors tried at Nuremberg, most of Unit 731's personnel never faced trial. A handful were captured by the Soviets and tried in Khabarovsk in 1949, but their testimonies were dismissed in the West as propaganda. For years, the world refused to listen, because to listen meant to confront a truth too horrifying to bear, that modern educated men could commit such atrocities in the name of science. Today, the site of Unit 731 stands as a museum, a grim reminder of what was done there. The laboratories are gone, but the concrete foundations remain. Visitors walk through empty corridors, reading plaques that describe what once happened in those rooms. In display cases lie surgical tools, faded photographs, and personal effects from the victims. Each object tells a story, and each story reminds us that knowledge, when twisted by ideology, becomes destruction. The ghosts of Pingfang still linger, not as specters, but as questions. How far will humanity go in the name of progress, and who will stop it when morality is gone? Unit 731 stands as one of the darkest examples of what happens when science loses its soul. It shows us that evil does not always wear a uniform or carry a weapon. Sometimes it wears a white lab coat and carries a clipboard. Shiro Ishii and his men believed they were serving their country and serving science. But in their quest for knowledge, they destroyed everything that makes knowledge meaningful: empathy, conscience, and respect for life. Tens of thousands of innocent men, women, and children died in those laboratories. Their names were erased, their remains incinerated, their stories silenced. But they are not forgotten. Every generation that learns of Unit 731 carries their memory forward, because remembering is the only way to prevent repetition. In the end, the story of Unit 731 is not only about Japan's crimes, it is about humanity's capacity for cruelty and the thin line between curiosity and monstrosity. As long as we remember, their suffering will not be in vain. But if we ever forget, history will repeat itself.